Hey, what's up everybody? Kris here. I'm the CEO of a startup company focused on ensuring there's a sustainable supply of human plasma and other components necessary to treat and cure the rare and chronic diseases that rely on plasma-derived therapies. I'm also the host of this podcast. Did you know there are more than 1 million plasma donors and more than 100,000 dedicated staff and professionals supporting this industry? But no one is having real conversations focused on the issues that exist within the current system. We sit down with people from all walks of life to have real conversations about all things plasma so that we can all learn the human side of this incredible business.
All right, welcome to the Plasma Podcast, where we dive into the world of plasma donation and the impact it has on saving lives. I'm Gabby Weeks, your host and the Marketing Operations Manager here at Proesis Bio. Today we're doing things a little bit differently. I'll be interviewing Kris Jonas, our CEO and founder, to talk about his entrepreneurial journey, the significance of donors, and our mission, and what it means to be a fierce donor advocate. Kris, welcome to the show.
Thanks. All right. Welcome to the show.
Welcome to the show. So, I have the joy of being able to work with you in the office here in Boise, and we have staff and team members all over the country, but not everyone may know a bit about our history. So you founded Proesis back in 2022-ish. Can you tell us what inspired you to start this company and kind of the background of it?
Sure. So I needed a job for one. I had recently been fired from another job, and so I was sitting around and I was working with a contact that I had and who is our main investor, by the way, and we started working together and building out the model, and it was just something that I couldn't. It was an itch that I couldn't scratch, I guess, and. I don't know if that's the right thing to say.
It works.
But it was one that I just couldn't give up. As I started building out the model and thinking about it, I had in my previous gig, I had learned how to start and build a business, and it was just something that I couldn't give up. I started building the model and it worked and it was fun. And then we went through a period of 8 months or so before we actually started the company, but that was all getting all of the funding and everything together. And so it was that. I had been in plasma my whole life, and I think we talked about this in previous podcasts, but I had always had ideas of how things should be done and how people should be treated, but that wasn't reality. That wasn't the reality that I experienced. And so I thought, hey, there's a way we can do things differently. And so here we are.
Yeah, and I'm new to plasma, so I've been with the company almost 2 years, which feels like 2 weeks in some ways, and
but that's
like
the
10
entire
years.
History of the company, right?
Exactly, It's the entire history. So the thing I've learned about plasma is we do it very differently. So would you say that, what was the thing that made you not stop thinking about it? Because you're an ideas person. You're always coming up with different ideas and potential opportunities, right? So what was it about Proesis? Because I think this is going to lead into my next question. We do things so differently here, and our donors are the focus. People are the focus. We talked about this previously too. What was it that made Proesis stick in your mind more than others?
Well, a couple of points. So ideas are easy to come up with, right? It's execution that matters. And we think differently for sure. We don't do things differently necessarily yet. We strive to do them differently, right? And they're all things that we're working on and throughout our journey here. So what was the question?
So what made Proesis stick in your mind more than what was it? Because you could have gone different paths, right? It didn't have to be plasma. So what about the idea of Proesis made you want to stick with it?
Well, plasma aligned nicely with our investor, right? That's what they wanted to do. And they saw the market, I saw the market, and the things that we could do in it. And so my guess is that we're at a period of time where there were a lot of independents popping up in the industry. It had gone through massive consolidation over the previous 20 years. COVID hit, exposed the vulnerability in the supply chain, and you had a lot of these independents starting to pop up. And we started from a different purpose. We had a strategic investor instead of private equity. And that was nice for us because it allowed us to be a little bit different. And I had worked for people who just didn't see people as people. They thought of people as numbers. And I remember this is a story that's going to be really interesting coming through in the podcast. But I remember having a boss who when we had a bunch of people go on FMLA in the center, he said, well, don't hire childbearing females anymore. Like, that's totally ridiculous, right? Like, you can't, like, first of all, it's illegal.
Yeah.
Second of all, you can't just keep a class of people down because your business might slow down or you can't otherwise figure out how to manage the business, right? So we came into Proesis with a different notion. We started out with core values, and those core values all related from our experience working for previous large employers, individuals not necessarily related to those large employers as well in startup companies and stuff. So anyway, that's why it was different. Like, I just, once I got fired from my previous gig, I said, never again, never again. Like, I don't have to put up with that. People don't have to put up with those types of individuals. And so, yeah, we decided to do things a little bit differently.
Yeah, I think that's true. I think we're, like you said, we're doing our best to do things very differently. Part of that stems, I think, from our core values, which, if you're a listener, we have 4 core values. It's bold authenticity, fierce donor advocacy, striving to serve, and intense curiosity. And I can say, being here for almost the whole time of the company, everyone keeps those front of mind. We have them on notebooks. We talk about them. They're referred to frequently in our meetings. And I think probably one of my favorites is the fierce donor advocacy. And I know you're a driver of this. Like, how do we make sure the donors are having the best experience? So what does it mean to you, and why do you think it's so important in our values?
So I was a plasma donor, and I remember, frankly, I was there for the money. I was a college student. I had no idea what plasma was. Somebody said, hey, let's go get some money at the plasma center. And I was like, oh, that's interesting. And so I went and I donated plasma, and I donated for quite some time. And I remember sitting in the lobby and going, geez, what are all these people doing? Why am I just sitting here? Like, my time's important too. And so I did that. I remember also being deferred from donating because my speed was out of range and the impact that had on me. And seeing that, and then my 20 years in the career, or my 20 years in the industry, just seeing, that, hey, there's a different way to treat donors and to, improve the experience for them so that it's not this, oh, I have to go donate plasma. It's more like, oh, hey, I get to go donate plasma, right? And I get to go see the staff there, and I get to be in this nice environment, and hey, I get money for it too, which is really the reason I'm there. And then I get to learn about it while I'm there. So that's really the genesis of fierce donor advocacy, is just a lot of different people coming together, seeing that, hey, things could be done differently. But in our previous careers, we didn't have the authority or the buy-in to create a different experience. It was just more about as many people as we could get through as fast as we could, and that was it. So
yeah. And as an entrepreneur, obviously there's a need to experiment, change, adapt, pivot. How do you balance the need for change and keeping up with the demand and what your donors are expecting, but keeping those standards high? Like, do you find it difficult in your role or in our organization to adapt and change what we do, but still meet those core values?
Yeah, it's tough. There's a lot of pressure coming from all angles, right? It's, you have to still manage the business, right? It's not like there's unlimited funds, and that part can be challenging. As you start to get multiple locations, it becomes challenging. Things happen. Somebody's training lapses, and you have to close down the center for a few hours in the morning, and you have these donors here or there who are expecting to donate, and they're not able to, right? So when we talk about fierce donor advocacy, and I know you're talking more about the entrepreneurship, but this leads into it. But so when you're talking about the fierce donor advocacy, like that situation that I just described is very impactful, right? It's like, on the one hand, it's not really fiercely advocating for the donor, right? If you're shutting down and they can't donate. On the other hand, if you look at that situation on the other side, because those things are going to happen, and there's going to be things out of your control too, but those things are going to happen. And so you look at that and see how you can improve it on the other side, right? Okay, how can you now monitor training so that situation doesn't happen? How can you get communication out to the donors? Hey, don't come in because we're closed right now. We'll be starting up at 10 or whatever. So it's those types of things that are fiercely advocating for the donor. I guess regarding being an entrepreneur and having that entrepreneurial mindset, it's tough because not everybody's had that experience. So not everybody knows what that means, right? It's one thing to say, oh, I want to be an entrepreneur. It's another thing to actually live it and do it. Like, do you really? When you're trying to get something done and you're trying to balance all of the needs of family and spouse and friends and work-life balance type stuff, I mean, it doesn't really exist as an entrepreneur. Like, balance is a notion that, I don't know, for me, it doesn't exist because I'm always thinking about Proesis. I'm always thinking about my family. I'm always thinking about riding my bike. Like, so,
Yeah.
and it's about trying to figure out where they intersect and how to, I guess, how to keep everything moving forward, because I am passionate about all of those things, right?
Did you expect it to be that difficult? Like when you were starting Proesis, did you expect it to be so all encompassing? Because everyone knows like entrepreneurship is challenging and it's hard, right? And it is demanding. But did you expect the scale of what it is to be how it is?
A little bit, only because I had that experience before, right? I had that experience before when I went through the phase of not knowing what that meant, which probably was partially what led to my termination at said previous company. And so I didn't fully know what that meant and fully understand the scale of it. What I can say is that now it's even though it's all consuming, it's really enjoyable. It actually fuels me, right? So now I'm riding my bike and I'm thinking about, okay, we've opened 4 centers. What are the next centers? How do we locate our sites? How do we improve this process? What does the business look like in 5 years? It's those types of things that are going through my mind and germinating. And the way my mind works is, I have to absorb a bunch of stuff, and I'm usually giving people the deer in the headlights look, and they think I'm not listening to them. Really what I'm doing is absorbing so that I can take a step back and then understand and figure out what, was being said to me. So.
Do you think once you digest, excuse me, and process all that information, you realize those epiphanies and that's when you figure out things need changing, or that's when you need to adjust?
Yeah, it's kind of weird. Like, it's usually at like 2:00 in the morning, something will happen and it'll be in the back of my mind. And then 2:00 in the morning, I'll go, oh, wait, that's what they meant by this. It's like, so that I'm a little slow in that sense, but yeah, that's just the way my mind works. I don't know if that's the way everybody's mind works, but it does take time for things to germinate with me.
Yeah. So you're always thinking about the business, obviously, and that's a big piece of your life. Mm-hmm. But when it comes to donors and patients and donor advocates and center teams, what are the stories that like keep you going?
Well, I'll just recap a story that last week we opened our Meridian location and we had a patient come out, and she was an Alpha 1 patient, and she's telling this story of how she got a diagnosis at age 46, I think she was, and the doctor said, this is fatal. This will kill you pretty soon. Most people don't make it to 40. And she found a doctor who got the right treatment and got her going, and she was telling the story, and she was 76 years old. So that was a really cool story. A little bit about me is a couple years ago, well, I guess it was 10 years ago, I had a deep vein thrombosis. I had a blood clot in my leg. And it turned out I had a condition called factor V Leiden, which gives me a little bit of a higher chance of developing clots. Okay. So didn't think much of it. And then I was in the previous company I was working for, I was in a really stressful situation, and as startup life is and can be, but that one was an unhealthy stress. And, I developed a pain in my lung, and I started coughing up, massive amounts of blood. And so that's
mildly concerning.
Yeah. So I went to the hospital and I had or to the emergency room, and I had a pulmonary embolism, which actually killed part of my lung. And so it was at that point, then I got on, a medication. And so while I'm not a true patient of plasma-derived therapies, there's always the chance that I develop a bleed from the medication that I'm on that requires me to maybe get plasma products when I'm in the hospital. So it's those types of things that really make you think about life and really is what I think helps to drive me forward. That aside from the exciting nature of startup and getting to do this really cool thing where we're building a business and advancing it forward, but it's those types of things that that keep me going.
Yeah, I think it's nice coming into work every day. We know that the end goal is to help people like on a very pivotal and critical level.
Yeah.
So I love those stories. And we've talked to so many people. You've had them on the podcast, donors, patients, advocates, and you could see the direct impact the work we do has.
Yeah.
And I think that's different from a lot of other businesses. Like you've been in the startup that was unhealthy. I've been in different corporations and government agencies. Like we've all had different work experiences. But the thing that makes our team so unique, I think, is everyone's so passionate and compassionate. What do you think about like developing a team to do that kind of work? Like what do you look for? What's that it factor in finding people who care?
That's the challenge, right? Because I think everybody says they care, right? And I think everybody does generally to a point. It's when competing forces come in that their level of care varies. And like in the beginning, we looked for people who had the same experience as us. And really, I think what we found was people who were doing well in their career, but maybe had hit a ceiling in the previous company because, let's face it, in big companies, you have a lot of people who are managing their career and they're going to, I don't know, keep a lot of people down just because if too many people rise, then that affects their career, right?
Yeah.
So I looked for those people and then it built from there. Like I think then we brought in a couple of people and then they brought in a couple of people and then they brought in a cascading effect. So I think the biggest thing is to find those people, find those individuals, set the core values. And then the other thing is to create a supportive environment. And that's tough to do when the pressure's on, right? I mean, there's pressure, there's financial pressure, there's regulatory pressure. So it's really tough to step back and create a supportive environment and let people fail. And let's face it, like we're a group of individuals who have never led an organization. And here we are leading an organization. And many of these experiences we have not had before. So it's the first time that we're running into situations and we have to figure out how to navigate it, right? And it's not going to do any good to beat each other up and have a bunch of infighting when we're all just trying to navigate the waters together.
Would you say that our differences keep us competitive in the industry? Because,
absolutely. And I think that it brings a fresh way of thinking.
Yeah.
I think that when we talk to people and people ask us about various things like, site selection and things like that, and we describe the process that we went through for that, like they're blown away. And it's because like we have just thought about things differently. We talk to people, we ask a lot of questions, we have that intense curiosity as one of our core values. And I think those situations really help us to do things differently. Not always rightly.
Right.
And it's not always the most efficient, but differently, right? And then we learn from that and then we're able to evolve.
Yeah, I agree. We are very fail positive here. We're always welcoming failures so we can learn. Quick failures, one of our kind of silent core values maybe.
Yeah.
But I think if we looked back at the past 2 years, there were quote unquote failures that just looked like not success, right? Like things we've tried, different ways to do things that just haven't worked out. Sometimes that looks like people, sometimes that looks like a flyer. Like it looks different every time. But I would say that if we went back 2 years and told ourselves to avoid those mistakes, we probably would have missed out on a lot of that learning and going forward. And a lot of, like you said, our strength comes from people thinking differently. Like we have people with different backgrounds, someone who worked in manufacturing, someone who worked for a state, like their experience makes ours so much richer.
Yeah.
If you could go back and tell yourself 2 years ago, like one piece of advice for now, what would you have told yourself?
It's like, that's a great question. Embrace it.
Yeah.
Go through the failure, right? Because if you don't, like, you won't know.
Yeah.
And so embrace it. Like I wouldn't go back and change anything. I would just say embrace it.
Yeah. So. Would you have started your entrepreneurial journey sooner? Because you came from corporate life. And
I don't know. I'm not like a, divine kind of intervention person, but it's like I was ready when I was ready. And it took all of those life experiences to get me ready. I'm still trying to figure out what I want to be when I grow up, right? I mean, I'm 46 years old. So I should figure that out at some point. But I think it took all of those different experiences to be ready. And like I mentioned a little bit earlier, in the previous company, I was like, yes, a startup. I get to be employee number 2 at this really cool thing we're doing. And I wasn't quite ready for that. It took me going through that, understanding it, seeing how the soup gets made and failing at it, to then going, okay, now I think I'm ready and I think I know. And I'm still going through that, right? It's like we've been in business for 2 years now, and there's still evolutions going on that you go through these highs and lows of learning and learning how to operate at this level. So
Yeah, when do you recognize something? What is there anything that specifically like triggers you to think, oh, it's time to change?
No, I wouldn't say it's that specific. It's
Probably more of all encompassing, right? Like you're talking to people, you're seeing what's happening, and
so that exactly. And then like I pull in my, I don't know, board of advisors, whoever that is at the time. And one of the things that I've really learned is to, as you collect these relationships throughout your career or throughout life, is like occasionally you step back and go, okay, maybe this person, I should just ask this person to come in and ask me some questions. Mm-hmm. And then they come in and ask questions, and they give you different ways of thinking. And so then that's when you go, okay, now I can do something differently. I can put these other things in motion based on advice that I'm getting. So,
yeah, I mean, you're very good at asking for feedback and consulting your board of advisors. I've seen you do it firsthand with all kinds of people. How does it feel to get that feedback sometimes?
Oh, it's painful.
Yeah.
I mean, it's great, but it's painful. And sometimes you just really have to take a big, hard look in the mirror. And I'm probably harder on myself sometimes than others are. And sometimes it's like I go through great pain over something I said or something I did, only to go back to the person. They're like, what the hell are you talking about?
Yeah.
Like,
yeah.
They
Right.
didn't perceive it that way. So.
Yeah. Everyone's got their own different experience, and here's something differently. But I think, and hopefully you're comfortable talking about this, but like, you have such a different background. You've done so many different things, and I don't know how much you want to talk about that, but I think it's important for people to know you.
Yeah.
How, did you get to this point in your life?
Oh, yeah, that's like a lot of childhood trauma, a lot of looking back. Like I didn't graduate high school. I was not disciplined. I started out in college and wasn't disciplined there. I started out in microbiology, and I was like, oh, organic chemistry. I don't have the discipline to get through that. So I went into business.
Yeah.
And that was like going into business was more just a means to get a piece of paper. And my real education, I don't think, began until I was out in the real world. So anyway, like I was probably a mediocre manager at best. And that's probably why I ran into such trouble with my bosses who were not necessarily supportive. Mm-hmm. And fighting through that and just learning. And it was more, I would say, a realization that I don't have to put up with that, right? Mm-hmm. And this leads to one of our core values, which is bold authenticity. And that's why that's the first one, is because I realized that I was always trying to fit in and be part of the corporate crowd, right? The ones who were deemed the high performers of the company. And it was through that trying to fit in that I was being mediocre. I was not allowing myself to be me. And it wasn't until, I'd say, just the last few years that I've recognized a little bit more about who I am and how I can be successful is by being me and being boldly authentic. And you guys probably see it all the time. I'm kind of goofy. And I try to set that environment too, so that people feel comfortable being themselves as well. So, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I know some of your background, obviously, just working with you for 2 years, but I think it's such a testament to finding yourself and being authentic, right? Mm-hmm. Like not very many people have the success story of not doing well in the structure that we have in schools and professionalism. And maybe you just weren't ever meant to step into line and follow the leader like that. You were meant to find your own and forge your own path. And you're adventurous as is. So that makes sense. Yeah. I think in Plasma, in our company, in the not philanthropic, but the altruistic business world, right? So much of that needs that brave leadership. Mm-hmm. And a lot of people maybe are afraid to embrace that. Mm-hmm. But the bold authenticity is one of my favorite values. I think we all talk about our favorite values in our meetings and in our office. And I like that we encourage that in others. I think it's important.
Yeah. You can't be you, right?
Yeah.
You can't be the best version of yourself if you're not you. And not everybody wants to go out and be a budding entrepreneur and live through the, I would say, the ups and downs of that. Some people are really happy at being able to spend, more time like with their family at 5 o'clock, they can shut it off, and that's what makes them happy. And that's what they should do if that's what makes them happy. And there's a reason that we have our own unique differences, and that's what makes the world go round.
Yeah, absolutely. Yep.
Let me ask you a question.
Oh,
so what does fierce donor advocacy mean to you? You're not from the plasma industry. So you're seeing a whole new industry and a whole different world.
That's a good question. Like you said, new to plasma, but I've done philanthropy my whole life. I think one of my personal core values is giving back and the importance of service. I think some people are born with that gene, and I have it. Fierce donor advocacy looks different for everyone, but everyone in our organization strives for that. If it's our recruiting person, if it's our marketing manager, if it's our IT person, we're all looking at the end of the day to serve the donor. And that can look, we talk a lot about hospitality, like going above and beyond and exceeding expectations. And I think it looks like going the extra mile and thinking about, how does this impact someone else? Because so often in our day-to-day, we look at our email inbox and our to-do list, and we think, I have to get this done and check through. But really, what you do, no matter who you are, impacts a real live person who has a needle in their arm and sitting there for an hour and typically needs that money a lot. And I've been in a lot of positions in my life where I've needed that money. So I know how dire and stressful that can feel.
Absolutely.
And we're all on this planet to help each other, I think, and get along, hopefully. Best case scenario. But I think fierce donor advocacy is always keeping that front of mind. And whether that looks like a small act, like if you're in the center, talking to someone, making them feel that human connection, or if that means you're making a flyer that's really easy for someone to read, sending an email that makes their day a little faster, the process quicker. I could tell you, I think our whole organization looks at the process itself of donation and tries to think, how can we make this the best for the donors? And when we fall short and we fail, we really take it personally. We really try to change it, because I don't want to hear the feedback that someone had a bad experience. I donated once when I was in college, needed money, and it felt like the DMV. And it was so impersonal, and I ended up not feeling great after, which was a personal thing. But sometimes you have that one experience and you think, never again. Right? All it takes is one fender bender to know you never want to be in a car accident. So when I had the opportunity to come to Proesis, I thought, this is a great opportunity to change how it is for people. And how often in your life do you get to make like a change like that for thousands or hundreds of people, right? It's not very often your small impact can make a big difference. So fierce donor advocacy, I think, means we are trying to improve the lives of others. And we do that in any way we can.
And it's big levers sometimes too, right? It's about sitting back and hearing not necessarily what this one individual donor experienced, like is there a common thread that's happening between multiple donors, and then setting systems in place to make sure that, hey, this doesn't happen again, or it solves this friction point for the donor. And that's one of the things that we're really working on. And again, we're really early on. So we have and will have multiple failures, and we will continue to have them. But I can say the notion of fierce donor advocacy, where we think through the lens of like empathy and continuous improvement, then it will improve over time. And we'll raise the bar, not only for our donors, but for all donors, especially across the United States.
Yeah, that's what I love. I like thinking and looking at some of these organizations, the associations we're part of, or the events we attend, and thinking, how can we make everyone better? Rising tides raise all ships, right? And I don't think plasma is going away anytime soon. It's so needed, right? How can we make it better for everyone, and maybe challenge the bigger fish in the pond to do better too? Because once there's some competition, right? There's an insurgence, or there's like a disruptor. Once there's a disruptor, you have to take notice, right? So if we're disrupting in the positive way that impacts people, I think that's great.
I think so too.
What's your most challenging core value? Or the one you want to work on the most?
I think the one I want to work on the most is striving to serve. It's real easy to put that up on the wall and not really espouse it, right? Like it's one that's a little more challenging because, let's face it, life is busy.
Like you said, anyone can say they like to serve, right?
Yeah. Anybody can say that, and I think I've seen this, on many people's LinkedIn profiles. They call themselves a servant leader, which is total bullshit. it's an aspirational goal. When somebody calls themselves a servant leader, and there are many people out there who I know who have this on their title, and I really like these people. So, but I think it's bullshit. Like, it's an aspiration, right? Like, we aspire to be servant leaders, but we're not servant leaders. Maybe we are for moments, and then other moments it's really about, okay, we're serving ourselves, which is just human nature, right? If I'm asking for a meeting at a certain time and it's disruptive to somebody, they're probably going to say, okay. That's not me being a servant leader, right? That's me serving myself. That's one that I really want to get better at, not just from like being a leader, serving in those kinds of ways, but also just, I don't know, like I have a group of friends and they're just like the nicest people I know. And I'm like, man, I feel like an asshole compared to these people.
Well, we all need good role models and like peers, right? You're the, the accumulation of the people you spend time with.
Yeah. And it's in simple things, right? It's in like bringing in a cup of coffee in the morning or like moving that meeting, right, to make somebody's day better. It's in simple ways like that too.
Yeah. I think a lot of our values are interconnected. There's a thread between a lot of them. But I think that service comes a lot to authenticity, like you were saying. And I think it could be small. Yeah. Like, it doesn't have to be a grand scheme thing. Right. Like, you did say we pull the large levers, and I think that's right. But I feel like, we try not to forget, like, the small ways we can do it. And I mean, at Proesis, we, like, encourage service in the community, and, like, so many of our people are active. But that's a good one. I personally struggle with the intense curiosity thing. Okay. Not because I'm not a curious person or inquisitive, but I got to tell you, when you reach your bandwidth on work and school and home and all those things, right? Sometimes you just want to take an answer and keep it as it is. Yeah, that's true. It's tricky to find the balance. But I like that we have 4. So everyone has their favorite, but I think everyone has one they can like work on. Yeah. Well, I appreciate you saying that, Gabby, but I think that you're underplaying, like, you didn't go to school for marketing. Yeah, here you are taking on marketing for an organization. So you're having to learn a whole new skill set, right? So that's pretty intense, and you're learning a new skill. And you just finished your MBA, and I don't know. So I think sometimes we don't necessarily reflect and give ourselves enough credit. That's true. Yeah. That's true. I think we're people like us too, and a lot of people in our organization are always looking forward for the next thing. Mm-hmm. I guess I am really curious about sourdough right now. I'm starting that. So that's one intense curiosity. Yeah, there's ways to incorporate it. It's been good though. Yeah, and next we talk about the health benefits of sourdough bread. No, get your folate. Yeah, it's good. I know there's a lot to like life in startup land. That's for sure. Yeah, I didn't expect it when I signed up for a startup. This is my first startup I've ever been part of, and I'll never forget. I was in my MBA, and you said this is the most intense case study you'll have, because every day is all the lessons you're learning. And it's very true. There was so much we were taught in class. I'd come in and it was immediately applicable or something we've been dealing with. Yeah. So. Yeah. When I went through mine, like, I was not in that same scenario, and it was a lot of theory, and I don't know. Like, I don't even think I remember anything from my MBA. Like, I graduated and I was like, okay, that sounds good. But. Well, there's so many different ways to apply it to, like, obviously not an entrepreneur myself, more of an intrapreneur, right? Learning what I can in the business. Yeah, there's lots of opportunities here to figure new things out. And that's kind of the nice thing about being a small company. I was telling someone yesterday, like, you can tackle whatever project you want. Everyone needs the help. So no one's going to say no if you're interested in something. So that's been fun. And plasma's a wild ride to learn about, that's for sure. I mean, it's definitely a unique industry. So yeah. I mean, it has the same challenges that every business has, right? Every industry has, but it's a fun industry to be in. It's very large, but it's small at the same time, which is, I know, weird to say out loud, but it is like a small group of individuals who I think you get to know throughout the industry. And so, yeah. What are you most excited about? What am I most excited about? Oh man. Proesis and LifeWise. Yeah. Two different options. Well, yeah, Proesis. So we have now 2 FDA approved centers, right? Ooh. So our third one's coming soon. It's already open. We're in the pre-licensure phase, or the pre-approval phase. And then we have a 4th one that's in the pre-approval phase also, right? So by the end of the year, we'll likely have 4 fully licensed, fully approved centers, with a 5th one under construction. And so we're growing and figuring out how to lead like an organization at that level. It's one thing when you have 1 or 2 centers, right? You start to get 4 and 5 centers, and then it becomes a little bit interesting. And
I do think it's fun that we have a lot of people in the business who are coming to us for advice.
Yeah.
I mean, that's to me is like, wow, like we're doing something right, I guess, if people are coming to us going, okay, how do you think about this? How do you think about that? And so that's pretty exciting too.
I think that's super cool.
Yeah.
It's that changing everything for everyone by doing well, right? Like
Yeah,
that
absolutely.
kind of mentality.
And this is not a zero-sum game, right? It's like we can go out and we can help others too and be, again, going back to raise the bar for not just our donors, but all donors, right? Improve the experience, improve the regulatory, the quality aspect of another business as well. So that's what I really enjoy.
Yeah. And personally, what are you excited about?
Personally, oh boy, I'm finding myself in this phase where I just really get to enjoy my family, and we're through all of the real young toddler years, and it's just really fun. Like I have 2 boys that are 9 and I have a 3-year-old daughter, and so it's just a lot of fun. So I'm really excited about that. I'm excited that the weather's getting warmer and we get to go be outside a lot. So
yeah. Exciting stuff. Yeah. Cool. Well, thanks so much, Kris, for sharing your insights. Incredible work we're doing here. I know that donors are at the center of all we do, and I think you're a great leader for that. And I appreciate you talking to me and letting me interview you for a change. Hopefully it was fun for you.
Absolutely. Yeah. So people are at the center of all we do. Donors are a component of that, but people are at the center of all we do. And I think that's what's really important for us to keep that in mind, especially as we think about our team, our staff in the centers, just everybody we come in contact with. So
I agree.
Yeah.
I agree. All right. Stay tuned for the next Plasma podcast and more donor stories and people stories.
Thank you so much for listening, and remember, plasma saves lives. If you enjoyed today's episode, please share with your friends and fellow plasma donors. I'd love to connect with you. If you are interested in discussing today's episode further, please send a message to info@proesisbio.com. That's info@proesisbio.com. And don't forget to follow us on social media for up-to-date information. Find us by searching @ProesisBio. Talk soon.